How one tank driver's crazy reverse strategy took out two Tiger tanks in 10 minutes, January 17, 1945. The morning fog clung to the forested hills of eastern France, curling through the twisted remnants of shattered villages. The earth was cold and soaked, churned by relentless tanks and heavy artillery. In the distance, a deep guttural roar echoed through the mist. The unmistakable growl of German Tiger tanks. The air smelled of smoke, wet soil, and the acrid tang of fear. Inside a battered Sherman, a young tank driver gripped the controls, his knuckles white, eyes scanning the tree line for any hint of movement. His crew moved with quiet urgency, the clatter of tools and whispered commands punctuating the tense stillness. The enemy was advancing, slow but lethal, two Tigers cutting through the terrain like armored predators. Every second stretched, the world reduced to steel, mud, and the heartbeat of survival. There was no time to hesitate. Something audacious, something reckless had to happen. The Sherman lurched backward, treads spitting mud, engines growling in defiance. The gamble was simple in thought but terrifying in execution. Retreat into a position that could turn the odds, face to face with tanks that had crushed men and machines alike. In that moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see if courage could outweigh firepower. The stage was set. What happened next would become a story of daring, ingenuity, and survival against impossible odds, shaping the way tank crews would think about battle forever. By early 1945, the war in Europe had entered its final brutal months. The Allies were pushing eastward, pressing into territories long dominated by the German army. Every mile of progress came at a staggering cost, as entrenched defenses and heavily armored units slowed advances. The Western Front, once fluid and fast-moving during earlier CE campaigns, had become a landscape of destruction, villages reduced to rubble, forests stripped bare by artillery, and roads cratered by shell fire. The German Wehrmacht, though increasingly stretched, had one weapon that remained a formidable threat: the Tiger tank. Its thick armor and powerful 88mm gun had earned it a reputation that bordered on legend, feared by infantry and tank crews alike. Across France, Sherman tanks, light, fast, and reliable, were the backbone of Allied armored forces. Yet against Tigers, they were often at a severe disadvantage, their 75mm guns struggling to penetrate frontal armor beyond close range. Crews knew that speed, positioning, and ingenuity were sometimes the only shields against destruction. Tank warfare had evolved dramatically since the war's outset. The early skirmishes of 1939 and 1940 had taught both sides harsh lessons about mobility, firepower, and coordination. By 1945, the Allies had learned to exploit combined arms, infantry, artillery, and air support working alongside armor. But these lessons were easier to theorize than to apply in the chaos of battle. On a foggy winter morning, in the forested hills near the German frontier, a single Sherman platoon was ordered to hold a key crossroads. It was a position vital to delaying the enemy's advance and protecting supply lines. The terrain was deceptive, narrow paths hemmed by dense woods, open clearings that could become death traps, and hidden depressions that could conceal both mines and ambushes. Commanders understood the stakes. Losing the crossroads meant exposing flanks to German counterattacks and slowing the broader advance of Allied forces. The Sherman crews assigned to this sector were experienced but cautious. Many had faced Tigers before, learning the hard way that underestimating them could be fatal. Yet training and experience did little to calm the visceral terror inspired by the sight of a Tiger turret rising above the tree line. Reports from other units filtered through, stories of Sherman tanks shredded from a single hit, crews forced to abandon vehicles in freezing conditions. Still, the orders were clear: hold the line, survive, and adapt. Within the Sherman itself, the crew was a small, tight-knit team. Each man understood his role. The driver, navigator, gunner, and loader moved in near-silent coordination. Hours of practice had honed reflexes and responses, but no amount of preparation could replicate the pounding dread of facing an enemy superior in firepower and armor. By mid-morning, scouts reported movement along the forest edge. Two Tigers were advancing slowly, methodical and menacing. Their engines growled like beasts, muffled by the fog but unmistakable to anyone trained to listen. The Sherman's commander assessed the situation quickly. Frontal assault was impossible. Flanking was risky given the terrain, and air support was unavailable due to low clouds. Conventional options had narrowed to one: ingenuity. And that meant pushing the Sherman to its limits in ways few commanders would dare contemplate. Tension in the crew mounted as the Tigers drew closer, their silhouettes emerging through the mist. Every clank of track and distant echo of a shell reminded them of the stakes. Success or failure would unfold in minutes, and survival was far from guaranteed. Here on this frozen battlefield, the stage was set not just for a confrontation of steel, but for a moment that would become legendary among tank crews. The fog, the mud, and the roar of approaching tigers would soon meet one drive: R's daring decision, a choice that defied conventional tactics, challenged the might of the enemy, and forced history to pause and take notice. The Sherman's commander studied the landscape with a soldier's precision. To his left, a shallow ravine twisted through the undergrowth, offering potential cover but limited mobility. To his right, the forest thinned into open fields, exposed and deadly. Behind him lay the supply road, crucial for retreat but impossible to defend if the tigers pressed forward. Every detail mattered. Each tree, each mound of earth could conceal an enemy or offer a fleeting advantage. The tigers advanced with their typical deliberate menace, their 88mm guns capable of tearing through a Sherman's armor at hundreds of meters. Reports from previous encounters weighed heavily on the crew's minds. They knew that a frontal engagement was almost always fatal, that tigers rarely missed, and that hesitation could mean annihilation. Yet the Sherman possessed its own advantages if used correctly. Though lightly armored, it was faster, more maneuverable, and could fire with relative speed. Its crew had been trained for unconventional tactics, to think beyond standard doctrine when circumstances demanded it. The problem was execution. The margin for error was razor thin, and the forest offered both opportunities and traps. Communication with other units was limited, and radio silence was enforced to prevent German interception. The men inside the tank could hear the faint clatter of distant artillery and the ominous growl of the approaching tigers, each sound sharpening their focus. Inside the Sherman, the driver's hands trembled slightly on the controls, the cold seeping through his gloves, but his mind raced faster than the vehicle itself, calculating angles, distances, and possibilities. As the tigers drew nearer, the crew realized the forest's natural formations could be exploited. A small depression, partially hidden by brush, could serve as a makeshift defensive position. Reversing into it would present the Sherman's rear armor to the enemy, a move considered highly unorthodox. Rear armor was thinner than the front, but positioning could allow the Sherman to fire its gun at the Tiger's weaker side sections while limiting exposure. It was a gamble, bordering on reckless, but it was a chance, perhaps the only one. The crew exchanged brief, silent glances. Years of training collided with instinctual fear, but the decision crystallized. Survival depended not on waiting for the enemy to strike first, but on taking control of the battlefield through audacity. Time compressed as the tigers closed the distance. Each second carried immense weight. Hesitation was deadly. The Sherman began its backward maneuver, tracks churning mud, engine growling against the resistance of the forest floor. Leaves and debris flew from under the treads, and the vehicle's low profile in the depression offered a fleeting cloak. From the trees, German eyes followed, watching for the slightest misstep. The first tiger paused, seemingly assessing the unusual movement. Its commander may have expected a straightforward engagement, but what unfolded defied the ordinary rules of tank warfare. The Sherman's gunner adjusted for elevation, preparing for the first shot. The crew's breathing was measured, almost synchronized, each man aware that one mistake could be catastrophic. Every detail, the angle of the turret, the recoil of the gun, the timing of the reverse maneuver, had to align perfectly. What unfolded over the next 10 minutes would become a study in audacity and precision. The Sherman's movement, combined with careful targeting and the element of surprise, created a scenario few thought possible. The first tiger's flank was exposed just long enough for a well-aimed shot to pierce its armor, igniting ammunition inside. Smoke and fire erupted, casting brief shadows across the forest floor. The second tiger advanced cautiously, attempting to flank the Sherman, but the same principles, speed, positioning, and ingenuity, applied again. The Sherman's crew adapted instantly, tracking movement, adjusting fire, and exploiting terrain. Chaos and danger intertwined, yet control remained in the hands of those inside the lighter, faster tank. In these moments, history would note that courage, planning, and rapid execution could balance, even overcome, the raw power of a superior foe. By the time the smoke cleared, the battlefield told a remarkable story. 2 tigers were disabled, their crews forced to abandon positions, and a single Sherman had maneuvered with skill and daring few believed possible. The immediate tactical victory was undeniable, but the implications stretched further. It was proof that innovation, audacity, and calm execution under extreme stress could alter the calculus of armored warfare. Reports would later reference this engagement as an example of unconventional tactics saving lives and achieving outsized results. The Sherman crew, physically exhausted yet focused, understood that their actions had not only protected their unit, but had also etched a moment of ingenuity into the broader narrative of the war. The human element of this battle was perhaps the most overlooked, yet it defined every decision made inside the Sherman. Each crew member carried the weight of expectation and fear, knowing a single miscalculation could mean death. The driver, barely 21, had spent months navigating the shell-pocked roads and forest trails of France, yet nothing had prepared him for the sight of two tigers looming through the mist. His focus, however, was absolute. Fingers gripped the controls with precision, eyes scanning every shadow for movement, every sound for threat. The gunner, young but trained to deadly efficiency, had to suppress natural tremors, lining up shots against armor designed to shrug off smaller caliber rounds. Inside, the loader and commander coordinated silently, their minds running through every training exercise and past engagement. Fear existed, but it was disciplined, channeled into clarity. In those tense minutes, camaraderie became a weapon as vital as any gun, each man dependent on the other's skill, reaction, and composure. Their humanity, nerves, instincts, and courage was inseparable from the Sherman's mechanical strength, forming a single entity capable of defying overwhelming odds. Tactically, the decision to reverse into position was extraordinary. Standard doctrine emphasized frontal engagement and maneuvering for flanking when possible, yet the dense forest limited options. The Sherman's commander recognized that conventional tactics would lead to disaster. By using the terrain to conceal the tank's approach and expose the tiger's flanks, he transformed a defensive posture into an offensive advantage. Timing was critical. The Sherman had to move slowly enough to avoid detection, yet quickly enough to prevent the enemy from repositioning. Every turn, every adjustment required careful calculation. The reverse movement allowed the Sherman to engage both tigers sequentially, maximizing firepower while minimizing exposure. It was an orchestration of precision under extreme pressure, where misjudging distance, angle, or timing could nullify the entire strategy. The crew's ability to execute this in real time demonstrated an acute understanding of battlefield mechanics beyond textbook knowledge. Technologically, the engagement highlighted the interplay between Sherman and Tiger capabilities. The Tiger's armor was nearly impervious from the front, and its 88mm gun would destroy a Sherman at distances where the lighter tank struggled to respond effectively. Yet the Sherman's speed, maneuverability, and relatively lighter profile offered opportunities for unconventional tactics. Its 75mm gun, though inadequate in direct frontal attacks, could exploit thinner side or rear armor if positioned correctly. The Sherman's engine and suspension allowed rapid adjustments over uneven terrain, while its turret rotation enabled precise targeting without repositioning the entire vehicle. Understanding these limitations and advantages, and exploiting them under fire, turned what seemed like a technological disadvantage into a tactical triumph. The interaction between human skill and mechanical design became a defining feature of the battle, proving that even inferior equipment could achieve remarkable outcomes when handled with expertise and daring. Leadership under pressure defined the outcome of this engagement. The Sherman's commander faced a choice that could easily have meant death for his crew: adhere to standard tactics or innovate under extreme risk. He chose the latter. Every decision, from the timing of the reverse maneuver to the precise targeting of the Tiger's flanks, required clarity, confidence, and decisiveness. Orders were concise, almost wordless, relying on years of training and the trust built within the crew. This quiet authority prevented panic from taking hold, allowing the team to operate as a cohesive unit despite the chaos outside. Leadership here was not about bravado. It was about foresight, calculation, and the ability to transform fear into coordinated action. Each member knew their role, understood the stakes, and followed the commander's lead, demonstrating how calm, decisive leadership could shape the course of battle even against a superior enemy. From the enemy perspective, the two Tiger crews likely underestimated the Sherman's capabilities. Trained to respect their own firepower, they expected conventional engagements and were unprepared for the unorthodox tactic of a tank retreating into a trap. The was methodical, confident, and supported by intelligence that suggested Shermans were predictable. As the Sherman executed its reverse maneuver, the Tiger's psychology shifted. Hesitation crept in. The Tiger's slower maneuverability in the forest, combined with the sudden, unexpected positioning of their opponent, disrupted their usual dominance. The engagement revealed that even the most feared machines were vulnerable to surprise, terrain exploitation, and human ingenuity. Awareness of these factors would later influence German tank commanders' approach to wooded, close-range combat, acknowledging that technological superiority alone could be countered with clever tactics. The moral and psychological angle was equally significant. For the Sherman crew, courage was not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. Each crew member faced a visceral, life-or-death situation, yet they transformed anxiety into precise action. The gamble of reversing into potential danger demanded trust in the vehicle, trust in training, and trust in each other. When the Tigers ignited, the crew's relief was tempered by the knowledge that death could have come at any moment. For observers and later historians, this episode symbolized the human capacity to confront overwhelming odds with intellect, intuition, and bravery. It was a testament to the psychological complexity of warfare. Survival depended not only on firepower, but on composure, creativity, and the willingness to embrace risk when conventional paths offered only destruction. The forest held its breath as the Sherman settled into position. The driver, hands steady on the controls, eased the tank backward into the shallow depression, treads spitting mud and detritus. Each rotation of the turret, each minor adjustment of elevation was calculated to maximize the Sherman's limited firepower while minimizing exposure. Visibility was poor. Fog clung to the trees, muffling distant sounds but amplifying the growl of approaching tigers. Moments stretched into seconds as the first tiger paused, its massive silhouette emerging through the mist. The Sherman's commander assessed the angle, noting the enemy's side was partially exposed. The gunner lined up a shot, heart pounding but movements controlled, as years of training collided with the adrenaline of immediate threat. The decision was made. Fire. The 75mm round left the Sherman's barrel with a sharp report that seemed almost inaudible against the muffled roar of the forest. It struck the Tiger's flank with precision, detonating a weak spot near the engine compartment. Smoke erupted as the crew inside scrambled, attempting to stabilize their tank amidst sudden chaos. The Sherman, still reversing slowly, kept the target in sight, ready for follow-up fire if needed. The first Tiger shuddered under the impact, its momentum faltering, giving the Sherman precious moments to adjust its position and line up for the next strike. Inside, the crew's focus was absolute. Every member performed their role with silent coordination, checking angles, loading shells, and maintaining situational awareness despite the overwhelming stress of the moment. The forest seemed to pulse with tension, as if aware of the extraordinary sequence unfolding. Meanwhile, the second Tiger advanced more cautiously, likely alerted by the sudden destruction of its companion. Its commander attempted to flank the Sherman, moving through a narrow corridor in the forest that limited maneuverability. The Sherman's crew anticipated this, adjusting the turret to track the approaching threat. Another round was fired, again targeting the weaker side armor. The explosion rocked the forest, shaking trees and sending debris scattering. The second Tiger's progress faltered as smoke curled and the engine compartment flames licking at metal surfaces. Despite the destructive chaos around them, the Sherman crew remained methodical, prioritizing survival while exploiting every tactical opportunity. What made this moment remarkable was the synchronization of timing, terrain, and human decision-making. The Sherman's backward approach had created an optimal firing angle that maximized the tank's potential against a superior foe. The crew's nerves, honed through relentless training, allowed them to operate as a single unit under extreme duress. Each second of hesitation could have been fatal, but precision and confidence prevailed. By the end of the first 5 minutes, the first Tiger was immobilized, and the second was severely damaged, smoke billowing as its engine faltered. The battlefield, chaotic yet strangely ordered, bore witness to an extraordinary display of armored warfare. A single, lighter tank overcoming odds through ingenuity, skill, and timing. As the forest settled into a tense quiet, the Sherman remained poised, turret rotating slightly to track the second Tiger, engines idling with readiness. The audacious plan, reversing into position, exploiting terrain and striking weak points, had worked beyond expectation. Yet the battle was not over. 10 minutes still separated the crew from total victory or potential disaster. Every action, from the driver's careful maneuvers to the gunner's precise aim, continued to define the edge between life and annihilation. In these moments, the Sherman crew transformed from ordinary soldiers into a unit executing a historic act of tactical daring, demonstrating that courage, calculation, and the ability to adapt could defy even the most feared weapon of the war. The second Tiger, though damaged, remained a formidable threat. Its massive treads ground the earth, and the turret swiveled as the crew inside struggled to regain control. Smoke and flames now marked its hull, yet the Sherman's crew knew that underestimating it could be fatal. The commander signaled subtly, and the driver adjusted the Sherman slightly, maintaining a reverse position while keeping the tank's rear angled toward cover. Every movement was deliberate. There was no room for error. The forest, dense and mist-shrouded, offered both protection and danger, constraining maneuver but masking opportunity. In these moments, seconds felt like minutes, and the weight of every choice pressed down on the men inside the Sherman. The gunner fired again, this time aiming slightly higher, targeting the engine compartment and treads simultaneously. The shell struck with a dull, resonant impact that reverberated through the hull. Sparks flew, metal groaned, and the Tiger shuddered as its engine caught fire. The German crew scrambled, issuing frantic commands that were muffled through the smoke and chaos. From outside, the forest seemed alive with the sounds of warfare, cracking trees, splintering wood, and the distant thud of artillery. Each explosion was a heartbeat, each smoke plume a signal of success or peril. Yet within the Sherman, discipline and focus ruled. Fear existed, but it was tempered by skill, anticipation, and trust in one another. The Tiger's response was slower now, uncertainty creeping into their advance. The Sherman's audacious positioning had disrupted the expected dynamics of the fight. A tank considered nearly invincible had been immobilized and set aflame by a smaller, more agile opponent. The crew adjusted sights, loaded another shell, and fired with precision. Flames erupted along the second Tiger's side, consuming fuel lines and armor seams. Its advance halted completely, and smoke poured from the engine compartment, obscuring visibility and further complicating the enemy's actions. The audacity of the reverse maneuver, combined with the crew's skill, had turned the tide in a matter of minutes. As the last of the smoke cleared, both Tigers were rendered inoperative. One lay twisted across the forest floor, the other stationary, turret frozen, fire still licking at its hull. The Sherman, remarkably intact, rested in its shallow depression, engine idling and crew alert. The forest, momentarily silent, bore witness to an extraordinary display of armored warfare. A single, lighter tank had taken on two of the most feared machines of the war and emerged victorious. The crew exhaled collectively, a mixture of relief, disbelief, and quiet pride. 10 minutes of calculated risk, nerve, and precision had altered the immediate balance of the battlefield, proving that ingenuity could rival brute force. The engagement left a lasting mark, not just tactically, but psychologically. Reports circulated among Allied forces of the Sherman's daring reversal and effective destruction of two Tigers, inspiring other crews to think creatively under fire. For the Germans, it was a stark reminder that even the most formidable weapons were vulnerable to unexpected tactics. The forest returned to an uneasy quiet, but the echoes of that encounter would linger in the minds of both sides, a testament to the impact of skill, courage, and audacity in the crucible of war. The aftermath of the engagement was immediate and profound. On the battlefield, the silence that followed the roar of artillery and gunfire was deafening. The two Tigers, once symbols of near invincibility, lay disabled among the mud and debris of the forest floor. Flames still licked the second tank's hull, smoke curling upward into the foggy sky. For the Sherman crew, the victory was both exhilarating and sobering. Relief mingled with exhaustion as each man grappled with the enormity of what had just occurred. The audacious reverse maneuver had worked, but only because every second had been executed with precision and discipline. One misstep could have been fatal. The men checked their instruments, confirmed the Sherman's integrity, and surveyed the surrounding area for lingering threats. Though the immediate danger had passed, the reality of war remained stark. The forest was littered with debris, remnants of destroyed vehicles, and the silent echoes of fallen men. Word of the engagement spread quickly through Allied command channels. Reports highlighted not only the destruction of two Tigers by a single Sherman, but also the unconventional tactics employed. Commanders recognized that the standard doctrines of tank warfare had been challenged and in some ways rewritten by a single bold decision. The crew received commendations for bravery and ingenuity, their actions entering both official records and oral histories of armored combat. The incident became a case study in training circles, emphasizing the importance of terrain awareness, split-second decision-making, and creative problem-solving in the face of superior firepower. Within days, other units on the front were reviewing maps and battle reports, analyzing how similar tactics might be applied in comparable situations. German forces, on the other hand, were forced to confront the psychological impact of the encounter. The loss of two Tigers, machines that were otherwise considered nearly invulnerable, created a ripple of uncertainty among tank crews. Reports described the shock and disbelief of the German crews who had been defeated, the frustration of commanders forced to reconsider previously reliable tactics, and the heightened caution that spread through units operating in forested or constrained environments. The engagement illustrated that numerical or technological superiority alone could not guarantee victory. Human ingenuity, audacity, and disciplined execution were equally decisive. Soldiers on both sides began to Worse in that war, even in its heavily mechanized form, remained profoundly human at its core. Beyond the immediate battlefield, the engagement influenced strategic considerations. Commanders on both sides were reminded that terrain could be as lethal a weapon as firepower. Narrow corridors, depressions, and forested approaches, once thought secondary in importance, were now recognized as critical factors in tactical planning. For the Allies, the success of the Sherman crew reinforced the value of combined training, flexibility, and psychological resilience. For the Germans, it served as a cautionary tale. No matter the strength of one's machine, the battlefield could never be fully controlled, and unexpected maneuvers could overturn even the most secure assumptions. The psychological toll of knowing that audacious, well-executed actions could disrupt carefully laid plans added another layer of tension to armored engagements. Casualty reports following the engagement were carefully documented. While the Sherman crew emerged unscathed physically, the destruction of the Tigers resulted in fatalities among their crews. These losses were not merely numbers on a report, but a reflection of the lethal stakes inherent in armored warfare. Equipment losses, too, were substantial. Tigers were expensive and difficult to replace, while Shermans, though more numerous, were valued for their versatility and reliability. The disparity between the human and material cost emphasized the remarkable efficiency of the Sherman's maneuver. With a single vehicle, two heavily armored opponents had been neutralized, saving Allied resources and personnel that might otherwise have been expended in a prolonged confrontation. The broader implications of the engagement became evident as reports reached higher command. For the Allies, the tactical victory offered more than immediate battlefield advantage. It was a psychological boost. Crews across the front lines drew inspiration from the audacity of a single Sherman facing near insurmountable odds. The story circulated in briefings and letters emphasizing that ingenuity, decisiveness, and disciplined execution could tilt the balance even against technologically superior foes. Commanders began re-evaluating training protocols, emphasizing adaptability, split-second judgment, and the creative use of terrain. The engagement became a teaching point. Armored warfare was not solely a contest of firepower, but a test of human coordination, courage, and tactical intelligence. German forces were forced into reflection as well. The two disabled Tigers represented not only a material loss, but a symbolic vulnerability. Tiger crews, long confident in their machine's superiority, were reminded that even the most fearsome weapons were fallible when met with unpredictable strategy. Reports detailed hesitation among German units in similar forested or constrained environments, noting that the element of surprise and creative maneuvering by opponents could disrupt otherwise methodical advances. German command documented the engagement as a cautionary example of how tactical rigidity could be exploited, emphasizing the need for flexibility, reconnaissance, and anticipation of unconventional enemy actions. The immediate battlefield consequences were equally stark. The Sherman's position allowed Allied infantry to secure the crossroads and maintain supply line integrity, delaying further German advances in that sector. Engineers and recovery teams moved in cautiously, clearing wreckage and assessing damage. Intelligence officers documented every detail, from shell trajectories to terrain features, creating a blueprint for future operations. Beyond material recovery, the event reinforced the concept that small unit initiative could have outsized impact. One tank, operated by a disciplined, courageous crew, had achieved what larger formations might have struggled to accomplish over hours or days. Psychologically, the engagement left lasting impressions on both sides. Allied crews gained renewed confidence, understanding that innovation under fire could offset technological disparities. For German crews, the encounter seeded caution and even fear in similar scenarios, eroding some of the morale derived from relying on machine superiority. Reports noted subtle shifts in how armored units approached forested terrain, highlighting increased reconnaissance, careful advance, and skepticism of assumed dominance. The Sherman crew's success became a case study in both tactical manuals and oral histories, illustrating that mental acuity, courage, and teamwork could triumph over seemingly overwhelming odds. The aftermath also highlighted the human dimension of warfare. The Sherman crew's actions were not the product of luck alone. They were the culmination of training, trust, and quick decision-making under extreme stress. Every maneuver, every calculated risk, had been informed by a combination of experience and instinct. In a broader sense, the engagement reinforced a timeless lesson. In war, as in life, ingenuity and resolve often define outcomes more profoundly than sheer force. The battlefield, scarred but momentarily quiet, bore witness to a testament of human capability, how discipline, courage, and creativity could turn near-certain destruction into triumph. The story of a single Sherman tank taking on 2 Tigers in 10 minutes is more than a tale of armored combat. It is a testament to human ingenuity under extreme pressure. In the foggy forests of France, where destruction and fear were constants, a small crew transformed uncertainty into opportunity. Their audacity, reversing into a position that conventional doctrine would have condemned, demonstrated that courage and calculation could overcome even the most formidable obstacles. The Tigers, symbols of German tech. Technological dominance fell not simply to firepower but to precise timing, terrain exploitation, and the seamless coordination of a team who trusted each other implicitly. This engagement reminds us that warfare, despite its machines and statistics, is profoundly human. Every maneuver, every shot fired was shaped by minds balancing fear with skill, instinct with training. The Sherman's triumph was not an isolated miracle but the result of preparation meeting opportunity. A fleeting moment where decision and action converged perfectly. It illustrates that the battlefield is never purely mechanical. It is shaped by human choices, creativity, and the willingness to embrace risk when conventional options fail. Beyond its immediate tactical significance, the event influenced armored warfare philosophy. It became a reference point for training, inspiring other crews to think beyond standard doctrine, to innovate under pressure, and to use terrain as an ally rather than an obstacle. It challenged assumptions about technological superiority, proving that even the most powerful machines could be countered with audacity and precision. In the quiet that followed, the forest bore the marks of conflict. Twisted metal, scorched earth, and smoke lingering in the air. Yet within that devastation, a deeper lesson endured. History often celebrates grand strategies and overwhelming armies, but sometimes it is the decisive, courageous actions of a few that redefine what is possible. In those 10 minutes, a Sherman crew reshaped expectations, leaving a legacy of ingenuity, bravery, and the enduring human spirit amid the machinery of war. This single act of tactical brilliance resonates beyond the battlefield, reminding us that even in the most dire circumstances, intelligence, courage, and decisive action can rewrite outcomes and inspire generations to come.